Miriam, it's a pleasure to have you at the Jerusalem Post sit down.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super happy to be here.
Very happy. Tell me, let's go back a little bit. You grew up in an ultra-Orthodox family, very closed, where questions weren't allowed to be, asked. And where was the turning point where you started asking yourself, is this the life I want for myself?
I was 16, the first time I really, really questioned the religion. So I was very much like, my mom left when I was like 12, 13 years old. And she was still very much a part of our lives and, was around. But she wasn't religious. And so I never wanted to not be religious too, because just because she left, I was still fully indoctrinated, brainwashed, or I believed in the religion. Yeah. And so it took me really, 3-4 years of being exposed to another way of life through my mother to begin to allow myself to question.
So there was not even a doubt of questioning before.
There wasn't, because I really believed in the way of my life, why, of course I had questions as in school, I always asked questions. I would ask my teacher, why do women have to wear pants? Why do women have to wear skirts if pants aren't considered beged ish anymore? They're not considered men's clothing. So
because they're made for women.
Right, exactly. And then those kind of questions, my teachers would just say to me, oh, when you go to seminary in Israel, you'll get your answers for these questions. Or they'll just say this is how it is, And so I still believed, I would ask questions within the religion, but I never asked questions about the religion itself. That was something that was deeply tied to who I was as a person. It was tied to my identity. And so why would I question my identity, who I am? It was so true to me. It's as true as gravity, So it took me a lot of time to allow myself to break the notion that maybe gravity doesn't exist. That's what it was like, basically.
Yeah. And how is it possible? I know in these very close communities, they don't let the mothers stay in contact, or the dad, if they kind of break through of the religious.
So I got really lucky, and that's why we even have a TV show about my family. It's because we've managed to stay close together throughout all of the craziness that came with breaking out of the religion. My mother and father managed to keep a very healthy, good relationship with each other. They were in an arranged marriage. They're never meant to be married, but they always respected each other as people. Yeah. And so luckily my father, when my mom left, didn't, ostracize her from the community, and instead allowed her to still see the kids, and allowed, somehow managed to be okay with everything. And so that's one of the reasons why it was okay. It was because my father actually was fine with everything that my mom was doing. And it's great because I got to be in touch with my mom and be with her throughout the entire process.
That's amazing. That's so important for you, for your mom, for your dad even.
Yeah.
And was there a moment where things started shifting and changing?
Yeah, so the story basically goes that I was 16 years old, and I went for the first time out of the country, first time ever. So I basically went, my entire childhood up until the age of 16 consists of me being in Monsey, New York, and then in the summer, during Sukkot, sometimes going to Miami to my aunt in Miami. And that's basically where I was exposed to, the different ways of life. And in both of these places, it's mostly just ultra-Orthodox Jews.
Yeah.
And I saw New York City for sometimes and things like that. But the way I always looked at those places was kind of through a movie screen, you see non-Jewish people, you see non-religious Jews, but you're not friends with them, you don't interact with them. It's literally watching them through a movie screen, and you live in your own world, in your own bubble. And that's why I always say with Borough Park Jews, or Satmar Jews in Brooklyn, they're still, even though they see the other life around them, they're still so closed off internally that it's they're watching other people through a movie screen.
Yeah.
So the first time I broke out of that movie screen was when I was 16, and it was my birthday, and my mom took me to Paris with her. And at this point, she was already established in the fashion industry. For her, it was only 3.5 years, and somehow she became creative director of La Perla. So she
Amazing.
was crazy, 3 years, somehow. So now she's living in Italy and France, and she's creating these, doing all these incredible things.
You knew about all this?
I knew about this, but I couldn't comprehend anything,
what you're doing,
Yeah, but she invited me to Paris, and she takes me to this beautiful hotel. I've never, coming from Monsey, New York, I'm wow, this is amazing, But at the same time, as I'm being exposed to all of this, at the same time, I'm still ultra-Orthodox. And so we go to all these fancy restaurants, but I'm not eating anything. anything there. All I'm eating there is, the bread, basically. And yeah, I can't remember. There's like one other thing, like croissants and like stuff like that, which I was approved like Orthodox wise for me to be able to eat these things, And so it was maybe like the fourth night that I was in Paris. And at this point, I'm eating bread again at dinner, And we're at a raclette restaurant, and my mom is taking this melted Gruyere cheese and pouring it over all these different meats, pork, ham, and she's like biting into it and just moaning and groaning. Oh my God, this is so good, so delicious. And I'm sitting there and I'm eating this hard bread, and I'm just like, oh, this sucks, and she knows, like, if I wanted to eat something else, I can, but obviously I wasn't going to do that because I was still religious. Yeah. But I think I really don't know if it was time or my hangriness. I was just frustrated. I don't know what it was, or maybe being so pulled out of my normal environment that I just felt like the need finally, or I gave myself the permission to ask her why she's doing what she's doing, which is crazy because for almost 4 years, I didn't ask her that question once. Wow. Not once did I ask her, why are you wearing pants? Why don't you cover your hair anymore? Like, I didn't ask her because in my head it was wrong. Yeah. And I there was a cognitive dissonance there because I knew that she was a good person. I knew that. And she's an amazing person, and she's my mom, so I love her. And so this person that I know is good and I love is doing all these things that to my religion and to my morality is bad. Yeah. It's going to put her in hell. And not just that, it's just bad. It's just wrong. Like, you don't want somebody that you love doing bad things, stealing, killing.
You're also worried about them because you think
you're worried about
bad's going to happen to them.
And I was. And I remember the first time I found out she broke Shabbat, it was a mistake. She called me when she was in Paris and I was in New York, and I answered the phone and I was like, wait a second, aren't you in Paris right now? And I'm like, and she said, yes. I'm like, oh, so wait, didn't Shabbat start for you? And she's like, oh yeah, but she was scared to tell me. Like, it was a very slow, progression for her even exposing to me that she's not religious. Yeah. And I remember that I cried so much that day. Like, I was so sad. I was like, oh my God, my mom doesn't keep Shabbat. Like, this is terrible. Like, Hashem's upset at her, this sucks. Yeah. So if I'm in that mindset, how can I even ask her why she's doing what she's doing? Because in my head, there's no reason, justifiable reason. Yeah. But being in Paris, being in this environment, I finally asked the question, how are you doing what you're doing? And the answer she gave me was the crack in my very deep system that I had for my entire life. And so I'll briefly tell you what that is if you want. Yeah. So she asked me the question, do you know the concept of the adjacent possible? Okay. Do you know?
No.
Yeah, I didn't know either. Basically, it's this philosophical idea created by Stephen Johnson, and it describes why innovation happens simultaneously. Okay, so it's just a way to describe a phenomenon that happens in societies, which is basically, when electricity was invented in the US, it was actually being invented at the same time in Italy by a different person, and so why do innovations happen all over the world at the same time, usually? And the reason is because of the concept of the adjacent possible. With what we have at a current time, it becomes adjacently possible to innovate something new. And so multiple people tried to do that innovation, which makes sense. Yeah. Like, if you come up with an idea of creating a television in the 1800s, that's not possible. You have to have electricity, photography, videography. And then once you have all these tools, then you say, oh, maybe we should create this way, for people to watch different things at once. And that idea, based off of the existing tools, is possible for multiple people to come up with. Yeah. So that's the concept of the adjacent possible.
And that's where all these questions started to evolve in yourself.
No.
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 Not yet.
No. So she told me this, what I just told you. And I said, okay, so, like, what, And she said to me, she was like, now apply that to religion. And once again, I'm like, you probably are confused. I was confused. I was like, what do you mean? And she said, what if, and remember, I'm like super religious. I believe in the Torah. I believe in everything. She's like, what if Moshe went to the heavens for 40 days and 40 nights? Because we know the story is that he comes down and he writes he has the 10 commandments and he writes the Torah, basically. Like, we know that he's the one who writes it based off of the word of God. That's what we're taught. So my mom said, what if when Moshe goes up to the heaven, instead of Hashem telling Moshe the what to write word for word, what if Hashem said to Moshe, these are the concepts of what it means to be a good person, a good Jewish person.
Yeah.
And that involves having a healthy family, and that involves eating healthy food, and that involves respect, and that involves all these really good values that exist in Judaism, right? And what if when Moshe came down from the heavens and when he was actually writing the Torah, he took what God said and, wrote it in a way that it applied to that time. Don't eat crustaceans. Then it was actually really bad for your digestive system to eat those foods.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that don't eat crustaceans,
Yeah, exactly.
And having a healthy family. A man should not sleep with a man. That's not a healthy way to create a family, So of course they're going to write that that's something that's wrong. That doesn't make that, how do you create a family from that, So just like all these different ideas and rules that are in the Torah, and some of them are very innovative, like for example, that women can own property. That's a very innovative idea at the time.
Yeah.
But even then, the way that the system was set up in Judaism, women were very enabled. Like we have like Miriam, for example, who was like a leader in the Jewish community,
Yeah.
And so maybe it made sense for Moshe as a sister of Miriam to be like, oh, maybe women can own property too. Like that's within the adjacent possible.
Yeah.
But of course, women can't wear pants because that's like men's clothing, and we all have our own rules.
By the way, men were wearing dresses in those days. So what's a woman's or what's
that's
a man's?
a great point.
Oh
yeah.
no, I always used to say it. I came from a modern Orthodox family,
Right.
but I always wore pants. Always.
Yeah. So basically, she said that to me, and like now looking back on it, that was basically a way to talk to me as a believer to basically bring a good argument. Like she just presented another argument against why maybe we don't have to take the Torah literally.
Yeah.
That's the argument. Maybe because that's what being ultra-Orthodox is. It's fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is looking at the Torah and applying it fundamentally, word for word, and having rabbis explain what these words mean, laid out in a way that you know exactly what shoe to put on first in the morning, you know exactly what you should be thinking at all times, and you know exactly, word for word, second for second, how to live your life. That's fundamentalism.
And you've been through such a big change because you've changed your beliefs and you've changed your identity.
Yeah.
What came first?
Beliefs, 100%.
Beliefs.
Yeah.
So you started opening your mind to a different way of belief, and then you started realizing that maybe you are attracted to women?
Yeah, it's because when I was in the community, I didn't know what a lesbian was until I think I was 15 years old that I like heard that word
For the first time?
for the first time. I think I was like 14. Yeah. And gay, we knew what gay was because that's like in the Torah directly, basically.
Yeah.
Like a man should not sleep with another man. So we knew that's gay.
Yeah.
But lesbians, like I remember my teacher when I was in 9th or 10th grade say that somehow lesbians came up in class conversation. Like he was a halacha teacher. And he explained that like it's not even possible for two women to do anything together. And that is a secular idea. Like it's not even possible. Like there's nothing for them to do, So like that's what I knew. Basically, it's not even possible for a woman to be attracted to another woman. Like that's what I learned, from school. So that's why part of my process of breaking out of this belief system, after that happened, I actually moved literally 3 months after I broke out of this community.
Yeah.
I moved states. I moved to California by myself. So now I was like growing up in this like isolated environment. I moved to San Francisco, California.
How old were you?
16.
16? You moved by yourself?
I graduated high school 2 years early.
Wow.
So yeah, like the first day I got to San Francisco was a Pride Festival. And where my student dorm was for this program I was doing was on Market Street, which is where the Pride Parade was happening. So I'm coming from Monsey, New York, with my single suitcase into a new state that I've never been to. Just like in my dorm, my window out of my dorm, the first day I arrived to San Francisco, what do I see? Naked women on the streets, like Pride, like San Francisco, like they're having their, and it was crazy. And I remember thinking like, where am I?
Wow.
Like, where did I go? What is this like sinful place that I am now a part of,
Yeah.
And it was there that obviously I knew just tons of gay people and queer people because everyone was gay in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, maybe I'm gay too, or like maybe like I'm also attracted to girls.
That was the first time you kind of started
Yeah.
thinking and realizing it. And I know you're writing a book about your whole journey.
Yeah.
Why did you feel like now is the right time for you to tell that story?
That's a great question. So I'm writing a book. It's called Blinded by Belief, and it's like part memoir and part psychological exploration on why we believe what we believe,
Wow.
and when our beliefs become radical. and if they're radical, and how to break out of them. And so this is actually a psychological tool I created called cult trap theory that explains the components that go into why we believe what we believe, how to take ownership of them truly, and how to break out or keep if that's what you decide to do. But basically awareness of yourself is like the key. And so the reason I'm writing this book is because I came from this environment that was super isolated and extreme, you know, in their beliefs. It was black and white, right and wrong, yes or no, my way or the highway.
Exactly.
I came into the outside world, San Francisco, I start engineering. You can be whoever you want to be. The world is your oyster. Build whatever you want to build. The sky is limitless, you know? Like, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, you know? People respect me here. Like, they believe in me. Like, I can do anything. And that's why I loved engineering. And that's why I'm currently in it again now. It's because of that ability to build and create an impact. Like it feels good, you know, to do that. And coming from my world, I didn't have that. It was really, you just do what you're told to do. And so I thought when I came into the outside world that it was free. And I experienced this freedom. But very quickly, I realized that it was a facade. And what do I mean by that? So I went to Stanford. I went there when I was 18 as a freshman. So I basically took 2 years working as an engineer and did it a little backwards, that journey.
Started working on Leiden
I worked as an engineer, and then my mom was like, you still got to go to college. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll go. I'm like, she said, go to Stanford. I said, I'll try. And then I got in. So yeah, so I did that. And it was really the start at Stanford where I realized that there is this black and white thinking that exists in the secular world too. And the first way I found that out was when, this is like pre, you know, October 7th, which now we know it's very clear that there's a lot of extremism in the secular world. But even in 2018, I remember I joined every political club on campus, and I joined the Democrat, Republican, the Socialist, the Communist, the Libertarian. I joined them all because coming from my community, I didn't have political affiliation really. And so basically, I remember I was dating a girl who was the president of the Democratic Club, and I went to a Republican meeting once just to see, you know. I was going to all the meetings. And one day she texted me, I know where you've been. And I'm like, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm not cheating on you. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what's happening? Yeah. And then I kind of maybe like, I figured it out a little bit because I already felt that there's animosity between Democrats and Republicans on campus. And then she said, I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, I know you went to a Republican club meeting.
And I said, for her, that was now the end of the relationship.
And that was the end of the relationship. After that, I said, yeah, I just went to like, you know, hear what they have to say. No response. She ghosted me, like full ghost. Like we were fully dating. Stopped talking to me. All of the friends I made through her, you know, like her friends. This is a freshman. Yeah. They all stopped talking to me. Like, that's it. You know, I was now a Republican in their eyes. I was now a bad person. Why would they even want to talk to me, hear what I have to say? Nothing. So that to me was like, oh my God, this reminds me of my past.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so
now you see that extreme lives outside of the ultra-Orthodox.
Yeah. And it's a lot more hidden behind inclusivity and diversity and these good values, but it still exists. And
they say you can say whatever you want, but if you do, then maybe you won't be our friend anymore.
Exactly. And so we all know from October 7th, that's been exacerbated dramatically, that this extremist way of thinking, you know, and like I've lost really close friends because of how I feel about Israel or just wanting peace in this region. That's an extreme idea to them, you know? And so how do we understand all this? You know, who's the radical here? Who's the extreme person here? Because everyone's using that word, everyone, right? And so that's why actually, before I wrote this book, I created this academic framework called SIT, which stands for Social Pressure, Insularity, and Two-Dimensional Thought. And I've been writing a lot about this. And basically, it's a framework to diagnose an environment that demands radical thinking. It defines what radical thinking is, and you can apply this tool to diagnose and see if any culture is extreme.
So your book is actually even a tool.
So my book is a tool, yeah. So my book expands on this framework. And so this framework I actually presented in TED in July. And basically it had I got amazing feedback from like all of the people there. It did really well. And that's why I'm now writing this book, which expands on that framework. And through that framework, I basically proved that our environment is ideological, is extreme. And here's the criteria to explain why. And so, so this book explains basically, you know, it starts with my story. And I talk about, you know, what happened in my world, why I believed in extreme things. What was the psychology that caused me to think this way? Why was I prevented from thinking any other way, even allowing myself to think any other way? And then is it bad to be extreme, or maybe there's some extreme ways that are good, you know?
I saw your video about it.
Yeah,
It was
exactly.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now I know that you moved to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
You just started a new job.
Yeah.
And this sounds very exciting. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's really exciting. I did not see this coming at all, but when the opportunity presented itself, I had to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm currently co-founding a company with the Prince of Raja Khaimah. This is one of the Emirates in the UAE.
Mm-hmm.
And what we are currently building together is this tool that I call Action AI.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically AI that does stuff for you.
Mm-hmm.
So right now we know that, ChatGPT is able to, give us
you
data, information. Yeah,
Exactly.
like you can give it documents and ask it to return certain things for you, you know. It does basically one task that you ask for it to do of anything, and you can have a conversation with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't really, streamline your life in any way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really read your emails and tells you responds for you, and it's very basic stuff, or it doesn't do stuff for you,
Okay.
It's more summarizing AI and not action AI.
And this one will do that?
And this is, so right now, this is all super new technology, It's called agentic AI. And what agentic AI is, it basically allows you to create this orchestration of different AI agents, that's what they're called, and you can create this way where they work together. So one AI agent, let's say, is reading your emails and then gives a summary on what the different emails are saying. And then another AI agent ranks them in terms of what you actually have to respond to and what the AI can respond to. Then it creates two separate agents on what you need to and what the other person, it just does the whole flow, of actually doing stuff for you.
So this sounds like a much more advanced AI,
So-
that tool that people can use.
Yeah, this is basically a whole nother GPT that's going to change the world. It is. This company has potential to be a multi-billion dollar company.
And this is sitting in Israel.
And it's in Israel.
And why in Israel? I know this guy is from the Emirates, as
Yeah.
you said, and now this company is sitting in Israel.
Yes. So the prince, he sees true opportunity ever since the Abraham Accords came out, which is a new development.
Mm-hmm.
So ever since the Abraham Accords came out, right now, not just him, but there's many Emirate leaders and people in the Middle East that have all this capital, and want to find new revenue streams to make with their capital. Because right now, most of the Middle East profits off of oil, right? And so Trump actually led this initiative and basically forced UAE to sign this document that says that they have to invest in AI.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this is a leader of one of the Emirates, and he wants to start an AI company. And where is he going to turn? Right now, the Emirates doesn't really have the human capital, the human intelligence to create AI. Israel does. Israel has that intelligence.
We are the capital of the high tech.
Exactly. And so because of the Abraham Accords, it's now literally in the past year and a half, it's not possible for this collaboration to happen, where there's UAE or Middle Eastern capital meeting Israeli intelligence, and human capabilities.
Yeah.
And so this company is one of the first examples of the Abraham Accords in action, truly. And what's so exciting about this is that not only is this a really cool company doing cool things, and it can create an amazing impact in terms of the company itself, but also what it stands for. When this company does well, it sets the example for all of the Middle East that, you should be investing in Israel because it works, And so this is going to set the stage for why we should be working together to create new technologies between Israel and the wider Middle Eastern region.
This sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
And I can see how excited you are starting this new job.
Yeah.
I wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you.
One last question
Yeah.
that is very relevant for this time now, after the elections of Mamdani in New York.
Yeah.
You've been living in New York most of your life.
Right.
And now with the elections, what do you see for the Jewish people living in the States, in New York?
Yeah, I think we all have to remember that there's really two groups of Jewish people living in New York. There's the pro-Mamdani group and the anti-Mamdani group,
Yeah, I think it's 70% to 30%, right?
I think it may be now. I know that it used to be more 40, 50% for the Mamdani side. But yeah, it's pretty bad in that sense,
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that there'll be minor changes, for sure. I'm sure there'll be less support for Jewish communities in general, or, the more maybe the religious communities. And in terms of the Reform communities, I think the support will still be there because they're more aligned on their views, being anti-Israel and things like that. So those Jews will probably be happy with what he's doing for the most part. But in general,
or maybe they'll be surprised as well.
Right. But I do think, and this is honestly more of a hot personal take, that I do think that there won't be much radical change that we see, even though though he is a very more extreme person in the sense of being a democratic socialist, like those are far views from what the normal Democrat stance is.
Exactly.
I don't think that he'll be applying those views in this election cycle. I don't think that he'll doing that. This is my own personal perspective because I see Mamdani as somebody who's playing the long game.
So he wants something else out of this.
Yeah.
This is the beginning of something.
This is him proving himself, to the public.
Yeah.
Basically saying like, look, I can maintain status quo. Maybe I can even increase your lives a little better by, maybe making small like cuts in terms of like taxes or like improving like, cutting some costs here and there, but nothing that's really going to affect New York City. That's going to like hurt New York City actually. And so then people won't do that migration that like.
Even though he promised all that.
Yeah, but politicians promise things and it's normal for that not all to happen immediately. And people also forget what they promised to, they just get excited about a figure for the most part. So that's normal.
And do you think for someone who has no work experience from before, he's actually the end result game for him is going to get there eventually?
I mean, to be very honest with you, like look at Trump. Like he came into politics as president, and he's done really good things for most of the foreign diplomacy, for example, So I can't judge him based off of that, but I do think that like it's more concerning in the long run with Mamdani when he runs for governor and when he runs for president potentially. Like that's the concern because then he'll have more power and he won't need permission from as many people to do what he wants.
And it seems like the younger generation are going with him.
And that's what I think too. As they get older, he's building a real alliance with an entire population of people.
So he needs to be very careful.
Exactly. Now. So he wants to keep their trust, keep them happy, not do too much because it actually will hurt them in that sense, in their daily lives. If New York somehow falls apart in any capacity, it's going to hurt the generation that voted for him. So I don't think he's going to be doing any of these radical changes right now. I think he's just going to mostly maintain the status quo and just motivate people through his speeches that he's doing something. Yeah. And then it's going to help him with the next election. That's that's my personal take on it. Wow. Yeah. Which is more concerning.
Yeah. I know for the long run, it is more concerning.
Yeah.
But thank you for joining us today. And I wish you so much luck with your book, with your new job. It sounds so exciting. And we're so lucky to have you in Israel.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.